Guess what, Lions? For as little as $5 a month, you can get access to exclusive bonus audio content and help this program grow by joining the Lions of Liberty Pride. To learn more, head over to lionsofliberty.com/support.
Pushing these risky acts into the fringes, into the back alleys of society just so you can't see them, that doesn't mean they freaking go away. It just makes them worse. It makes the consequence at the end, it just makes it that much worse. You have people dying because of it.
Welcome to Felony Friday, a presentation of the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here is your host, John Odermatt.
Felons, friends, and freedom lovers, it is time for another edition of Felony Friday right here on the Lions of Liberty podcast. As you know, Felony Friday is the show that focuses on exposing injustice in the broken criminal justice system. This is episode number 72 of Felony Friday, so that means you'll be able to find the show notes for everything that we're going to talk about at lionsofliberty.com/FF72. And we're going to have a lot of notes, a lot of links to different stories on that show notes page, because for today's episode, I'm bringing on a frequent guest here on the Lions of Liberty podcast. He has helped me co-host this show, Felony Friday, before. It is none other than the mysterious Rico. Rico, welcome back to Felony Friday.
What's up, big guy? How you doing?
Man, it's just living the dream. Just another day in paradise here for me. How about you?
Oh yeah, they're all paradise with me. It's all smooth sailing and sunshine and good things. What can I say?
Sunshine and daydream. So you're at your home base now in Cleveland. You're not traveling around the globe, are you?
No, I did my traveling for today. It's just a quick road trip. So back home, sitting in the office, ready to pump out some felony stories.
All right, awesome. And we got some doozies to talk about today. We're going to talk about Jeff Sessions. We're going to talk about probably everyone in the country now has heard about this Penn State fraternity scandal. There was a death at a Penn State fraternity, and I think 18 students have been charged. So we're going to dive into those two stories. And then we're going to play America's fastest growing podcast game show, Is This a Crime and Should They Do Time? But we're going to start out with our boy, not our boy, he's definitely not our boy, Jeff Sessions, and his announcement last Friday. So listening to this today, last Friday, Jeff Sessions sent out a memorandum to federal prosecutors ordering them to charge and pursue the most serious and readily provable offenses in all cases of drug crimes. This was after a speech that he gave in West Virginia, and Sessions actually, during the speech, linked the opioid crisis with an uptick in violent crime in American cities. This, of course, ignores the fact that crime is down across the board in America. And he did have this one gem that I got to note, because it really, if you think about it from a libertarian perspective, from a, we shouldn't be locking people in cages for nonviolent crimes and looking at the cause and effects of the drug wars, this statement, looking at it through that lens, sort of, it invalidates the war on drugs, but Jeff Sessions saying it, he said it as a way to prove that there needs to be more intervention. So here's what he said. We know drugs and crime go hand in hand. Drug trafficking is an inherently violent business. If you want to collect a drug debt, you can't and don't file a lawsuit in court. You collect it by the barrel of a gun. So, common sense would tell you, well, maybe we should just make it legal so people can settle these disputes in court. You don't see people robbing pharmacies, as my guest last week, Rayford Davis, pointed out. So that would kind of remedy that problem, mitigate that little bit of violence there. But I guess Jeff Sessions doesn't care about that. So, Rico, what are your thoughts on this? Did you see this coming? Are you surprised by Jeff Sessions really starting the war on drugs 2.0?
Not at all. I think everyone pretty much realized once they knew who Jeff Sessions was as a person, what he believes in, that he would want to go this route. The only thing that gave us any kind of hope was that Trump was more of a populist and would kind of say, well, the nation sentiment is heading towards, well, drugs, at least marijuana should not be illegal. We want less nonviolent offenders in prison. And that's the way it's been going, and that's what people want. But that was kind of the only thread I was hanging on to. But him appointing Sessions in the first place kind of gave me reason to pause on that. And this is just, it seemed inevitable once he got appointed, because they didn't appoint Jeff Sessions to kind of speed things along with decriminalization of drugs. That's not who he is. This is who he is. And even though I knew it was coming, it still infuriated me. And I thought the same thing when I read that quote. It's like, hey, dumbass, why is this stuff illegal in the first place? But that kind of logic never enters his mind.
I think it was episode, was it 43 that we talked about this?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we talked about him, I think, right after Trump got elected and his name was floated out there. And I don't think we had a lot of good things to say about him. I think maybe we were hopeful that, we were grasping at straws.
We did it was episode 49. Sorry about that. You can find that episode at lionsofliberty.com/FF49. Yeah, I think we both came to the conclusion, as you were just saying, that we were kind of terrified, but hopeful that Trump, being a populist, would kind of rein him in. But it kind of seems like Trump's MO to start with has been sort of let his guys that he puts in place do their thing. He doesn't seem to micromanage them at all. So putting in a tyrant like Jeff Sessions in this role as Attorney General, I guess we shouldn't be surprised to see what he's doing, as maddening as it is. And I know that I don't have the specific article in front of me, but I know that Rand Paul was talking about introducing some legislation to, I think, bring back some of the reforms put in place under President Obama. I guess hoping to overrule this. I'm not sure how that would work, because at the end of the day, it's up to the executive branch to enforce the law, so they could just sort of circumvent that, I would think. But I don't know. I'm not sure the best way to handle this from a legislative standpoint, unless
Congress sets the laws. So all Sessions is really doing is enforcing what's possible that's on the books. So Congress could easily, I don't know about easily, because they actually did try to do this, and the wonderful Mitch McConnell blocked the Sentencing Reform and Corrections Act from even, it was passed through committee, and he 15-5, and he blocked it from ever having a Senate vote for whatever reason. This bill would have tried to reduce the disparity between crack and cocaine, reduce mandatory sentences. It would have limited the use of solitary confinement on juvenile prisoners. God knows, we had to have more of that. It would have reduced the possibilities of life, reduced 20-year sentences to 15-year sentences. But this didn't even get to be voted on, because the wonderful Mitch McConnell did not allow it to be voted on. So, but theoretically, this could maybe spur a movement again to get this or something similar passed through Congress. And this bill wasn't perfect, but McConnell didn't even let it be voted on. So that's kind of a problem. And another thing I thought is, I was irritated at the time that Rand Paul voted to confirm Sessions. And then he wrote that editorial in CNN saying, well, these are the problems. It's like, well, you know what? We all saw this coming. I'm sure you did too, but you didn't do anything to stop it. And now you're going to write an essay in CNN. That's not going to do jack shit. So it's empty. I'm disappointed in Rand for his kind of, I won't call it complicity, but just kind of rolling over with the confirmation of Sessions in the first place.
The thing with Rand Paul that is frustrating to me is he kind of tries to dance around some of these issues. Obviously, he's watched his whole life growing up with Ron Paul being his father. Is Ron Paul from the Republican Party has just cast him aside any time that he's gone against standard Republican talking points, when he's spoken out against the war on drugs, for an intervention, et cetera, et cetera. Rand has, I guess, tried to learn from that, in quotes, and has decided to play the political game. And obviously it's not working out. He ran for president, and no mainstream Republicans took him seriously. So that's obviously not working. So you would think that he would learn from that. It just happened. and use the Jeff Sessions nominating process to make a stand, to take a stand and say, no, you can't nominate this guy. He could have done a filibuster and made a big deal out of it, and he really could have blocked him indefinitely, and he would have had people on the left, there were people on the left that would have supported him in that. So I don't know what the heck Rand Paul is thinking voting for Jeff Sessions. Obviously, the worst case scenario has played out in front of us, and I did want to point out, talking about Mitch McConnell and blocking that sentencing reform, blocking that criminal justice reform. His wife, Elaine Chao, is Trump's transportation secretary. And the funny thing with that is there was a conspiracy theory or some sort of linkage between Chao's, I think, father and her father's family transporting drugs into the United States and submarines or something. Did you remember hearing about that, Rika?
What? No.
Yeah, there was maybe I'll have to save that for a conspiracy theory roundtable. I can dig into that one a little bit more. But there was something there, and it kind of fits in with McConnell, wanting to keep it on the black market. Maybe somehow his family or people that he's tied in with, maybe they're profiting from that somehow by utilizing black market channels. I don't know. Just saying.
That's enough for me. I believe it.
Completely unsubstantiated.
I'm on board. I'm on board. Actually, one of the things I read about this Sentencing Reform and Corrections Act, it was supported by former FBI Director Louis Freeh. So
really?
Let's put a point on the board for Louis Freeh. We got enough on the negative. We can give him one.
For those of you keeping track at home, that is now 1 point for Louis Freeh and 1,000 negative points. So
yeah.
He's got
a long way to go, but yeah, it's a
some
start.
Work to do. Speaking of Louis Freeh, obviously he has the ties to Penn State, is being hired by Penn State to look into the Sandusky scandal, which we've talked about extensively on that show. If you want to hear my thoughts and John Ziegler's thoughts on the Sandusky scandal, you can just go to felonyfriday.com and just search on that page for Sandusky or for John Ziegler, or you can just go to lionsofliberty.com/ff8/ff14 or /ff31. There's 3 different episodes, and I know you guys know how to use the internet, so you can also use Google to find them. But Louis Freeh was tied in with Penn State that way. We're talking about another Penn State scandal, and this one involved a Penn State fraternity who, in a really tragic event, a fraternity pledge passed away. He died. There was a drinking event, a bid acceptance night, and this fraternity pledge, I guess at Penn State we called them Beta. I don't know their full letters, but is it
Beta Theta Pi?
Beta Theta Pi. Yeah. Pledging that fraternity, they have a bid acceptance. He gets inebriated drunk, obviously under the age of 21, falls down the steps several times. There's video that hasn't been released yet, but will probably be made public shortly, of him stumbling around the house, falling down the steps. Brothers sort of, there's one instance where the brothers were sort of fighting with each other. One wanted to call 911. That guy was overruled, and they didn't call 911. They waited until the next morning, about 10:45, and this guy had fallen down the steps at, I don't know, like before midnight the night before. And when they finally did call, he was completely unconscious. He was barely alive, turning purple. And when they did, ambulance came, took him to the hospital. He was declared dead. So the result of this, there's been 18 students charged, 8 charged with involuntary manslaughter. That's a felony charge, so they could get significant jail time for that. And 10 facing lesser charges, including hazing and furnishing alcohol to minors. So, Rico, I know you've followed this case closely and looked into it, as Rico and I, of course, both went to Penn State and we're both in a fraternity. But what are your thoughts on this case?
Oh, well, I think there's a couple different things. One, you can't really defend the kids in this situation. They acted, horribly. I'm not talking about the actual drinking event. I'm talking about what happened afterwards. So I think there's kind of different stages, and I think this kind of deals with the law of unintended consequences. And just to go back a little bit, I've seen a lot of, and it's hard to blame the parents for saying, what they say. They're rightfully just heartbroken and full of anger about the situation.
What are you referring to with the parents said how they said that they want to pursue the full that these kids get 20 years in prison, or was there something else?
Oh no, I didn't even see that. No, I don't think they're not going to get 20 years in prison. There was no intent for this kid to die. My thought was what they were concerned about is it was more of a matter of self-preservation for them. And as you know, being in college, I've seen many extremely inebriated people, not just in college, but in every, all the time. You don't. Mm-hmm. Well, not, you know what I mean? Not all the time, but we've seen our fair share. I'm not walking over sidewalk, but I think their thought was when you're 18, you're like, all right, well, he had way too much to drink, and what's going to happen is he's going to sleep it off, and he's going to wake up in the morning. We're going to laugh about this. Mm-hmm. And we've all had those nights where we got way too drunk, and we're like, man, that was ridiculous. And you laugh about the next day. Well, that's not what happened here. This kid died. So the worst possible outcome here. But they weren't thinking like he's going to die at the time. What they were worried about is, I'm guessing, but they were probably worried about like, look, if we call the hospital, we're all going to be fucked. They're going to charge us with hazing. They're going to shut us down. They're going to, charge us with this and that. When, we do nothing, he's going to wake up in the morning and he's going to have a hangover and feel like shit. And that's going to be the worst. That's probably what these kids were thinking. They're not thinking like this kid's going to die. So I think there's a lack of intent. And then the problem is, okay, well, why are they so worried about getting in trouble? And it's because of the drinking age. One, if all these kids were 18, then there's not going to be, or if the drinking age was not 21, it's 18.
Right.
You're probably going to have a different level of personal responsibility with drinking because a lot of kids aren't going to go to college and just go fucking crazy. They're going to have experience with legal drinking maybe before. Maybe they turn 18 in high school. So they're going to be able to handle it better. The kids, the brothers and Beta aren't going to be worried about getting in trouble because the kid legally was drinking, and now they're concerned about him, and they take him to the hospital, and the hospital pumps his stomach or does what they have to do. And, okay, maybe there's some medical costs, but everyone's alive and no one's charged, and they don't have to worry about that. But now it's going to shift again even further from that. What's the calls for the parents said the IFC, which is the Interfraternity Council, kind of a loose governing body of all the fraternities at Penn State. The parents are saying, well, they're a criminal organization. They're covering up. When I was when we were in college, we had to do all sorts of crap that kids that did not live in fraternities did not have to do. We had to go to risk management seminars. We had to have these people come in and talk to us that didn't know shit, but we had to go listen to them all the time. I'm sure you remember some of these speakers that we'll laugh about off the air. There was all these rules that we had to follow. And guess what? If you ban the fraternities, drinking is not going to stop at Penn State or any other school. It's going to happen just as much, and it's going to happen in dorms. It's going to happen in off-campus apartments or houses. And from my experience, it was a lot harder to get drunk if you're going to a fraternity party than if you're going to an apartment party or, some random person's house, because there was some sort of regulation at fraternities. It was hard for just a random person to walk in. There was no liquor given out to random people. That happens.
And you're talking about, just to explain for anyone listening. So we're talking about sort of two different things, though. If you're talking about like a fraternity party, which would have just cases of beer, that was it. No kegs, no liquor. The event where this kid Timothy Piazza died, that was a a private event or an exclusive. It wasn't an open party. Right. They did have obviously this kid was drinking liquor. They did have liquor. So they're inebriated.
So my point on that is, if the other brothers weren't as worried about perhaps themselves getting into trouble with calling the hospital, because that's the only possible reason they didn't call any kind of medical assistance, is because they're worried that once they get there, they're going to be charged with giving a minor alcohol.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought of. I mean, this is another case of pushing things onto the black market, introducing, making things more dangerous. And
exactly.
It's exactly like you said. This goes back to, it's the same thing as we talked about with Jeff Sessions. You're not going to make anything safer. You're not going to reduce risk by introducing more risk, by pushing these risky acts into the fringes, into the back alleys of society, just so you can't see them. That doesn't mean they freaking go away. It just makes them worse. It makes the consequence at the end, it just makes it that much worse. You have people dying because of it, and everyone is afraid to freaking address it. You'll never hear a university president come out and actually say anything remotely like that they should reduce the drinking age to reduce risk. No one has any freaking balls to talk about this subject, and it just keeps getting worse. I think kids are drinking more and more and more. When I was in college, I was guilty of it too. I got drunk all the time, and I drank when I was underage, and I had no idea of the consequences of it. But it's really an out of control thing that's going on, and the only way to fix it is to actually, like you were saying, start to. And I don't know how you do it. Maybe if you phase it. I don't think you can flick a switch tomorrow and say, all right, let's make it so 18-year-olds can drink. Maybe you do have to kind of phase it in, maybe take it back to 20 first for a couple years and then back to 19. I'm not sure what the best way to do it is.
Well, I think at least in this, and this is not going to defend these kids once you see a kid fall down steps.
Oh yeah.
Look, you gotta say, look, at this point, I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about him. So that's, I'm not defending from that point forward, but I think there can be some kind of, I don't know if you want to call it like amnesty or something, like, you know what, you bring your friend to the hospital who's intoxicated like this, there's no questions asked. Okay, no follow-up investigation.
There is a law. I don't remember the name of the law, and I can't find it right now. But apparently there is an amnesty type law on the books like that in Pennsylvania. But I'm not sure how much that would have protected them, and I'm sure the kids didn't know about it.
Yeah, maybe you better educate them. And for all the risk management things that we had to sit through, I never heard any of those speakers say anything about that. So if it's true, they never mentioned it to us once, and perhaps they should have, because if these kids knew, like, look, we can take this, I forget his name, something Piazza, if we can take him to the hospital and they can pump his stomach and he's going to be okay and no one's going to, question him later, it's a no-brainer. Okay, we're not getting in trouble for hazing. We're not getting in trouble for supplying, alcohol to a minor. He's going to be okay. Phew, good. Disaster averted. So, but no, of course, the situation now is shut down all the fraternities or more rules and regulations. Like, it's always going to go the other way from what I think it should be going to. And it's, we'll see how it works out, but I don't see good things for it.
Yeah, and people have to remember, too, of course, leave it to a Pennsylvania grand jury to come out and just completely, with a broad brush, just paint everyone guilty.
God, that infuriating.
The university and the IFC, the Interfraternity Council, has created a permissive environment to allow this behavior to go on. Come on. I'm not defending these kids. Obviously, they should serve time, probably. I think some of the ones directly responsible for making the decision to not take this kid to a hospital definitely should do some time.
Yeah.
And in a situation like that, at a fraternity, when you have drinking going on, if there wasn't somebody there that was sober, not drinking at all, to monitor the event, then that's a horrible mistake. Yeah. But I don't know. It's just
that. I forgot to mention that what you just said, though, about the statement, the grand jury findings, where they said, and they used the culture again, Penn State and culture. We're fostering a culture that's just blatant disregard for, safety and promoting alcohol abuse. It's like, how does a grand jury in State College, Pennsylvania, possibly make that finding? Were they investigating all the fraternities? Because when I was there was 55 to 60, so it's probably something similar now. How are you making that broad statement about all fraternities up there? It's, And it's just such blind to the fact that it's not fraternities that are responsible for the alcohol problem. It's kids being away from home, wanting to party. And it's now whatever you do to a fraternity, it's not going to stop that at Penn State or any other college, really.
Yeah. So you don't think these kids will do time? Is that what you said earlier?
Oh, I don't remember saying that.
Maybe you didn't.
Perhaps I don't think they're going to do 20 years. I think that's what I said.
Okay. I think they definitely will do time, and I think they should. But I think maybe all 8 of them will that have been charged with this felony crime, because obviously somebody's guilty for not placing a phone call there to 911 when he falls down the steps. But any jury the jury's already been corrupted by this report. They're going to want to validate that they are good people. The same thing that happened in the Sandusky trial. I mean, everything's blown up nationwide, looking like this entire fraternity system is horrible. There has to be a scapegoat. There has to be we have to hold somebody else down to virtue signal that we are not horrible people. We're not evil people. So these kids, I think, definitely will. They could do 20 years. I don't know. We'll see.
I would be surprised with that. Well, there's also problems with them because they were texting about how to cover up the evidence, which, I mean, this is stupid on so many levels. One, get the kid help. 2, you're sending electronic messages. Do they not follow the news? Everything can be traced. Like, seriously.
John McAfee can find everything you've ever done on the dark web.
Yeah. They're hacking Donald Trump. They're going to be able to find out what a couple dumb 20-year-olds were sending text messages about. So that's going to be a problem. There's definitely going to be some jail time. There was no intent for this kid to die, but it was certainly criminal negligence that probably rose to the level of some kind of involuntary manslaughter, like they're being charged. And so they're going to get a few years in jail. That would be my guess. They'll get sentenced to something, and they'll all be in 2 years. They'll not be in jail anymore. But that's quite a long time. These kids their futures are definitely going to be severely affected by that, but obviously not as much as the kid who died. So not a good situation. Yeah.
I mean, and just want to make clear that you and I, we're not making excuses for these kids. They definitely, this is a criminal act. Just saying that the system in place, the law in place for having a drinking age of 21 years old, sort of, it creates an environment where these type of circumstances come up really, really often, and they don't always turn out like this with somebody dying. A lot of the times, nothing happens. Everybody laughs about it the next day, like you were saying before. It's a risk that really needs to be reduced, and the only way to do that, I think, is to slowly reduce the drinking age and normalize drinking and stop pretending that this type of stuff isn't going on. But anyway, I think we've talked about this enough.
Yeah.
We're going to move on and play America's fastest growing podcast game show. Is this a crime? And should anyone do time?
Is it a crime? Should they do time? Or do you think they learned their lesson from a hefty fine? Is it a crime? Should they do time? And since we have to ask the question, is the system down or out of line?
You're not like Steve Harvey, right? Sending out memos about not approaching you in the Lions of Liberty studios or knocking on your door. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen that. Can you?
Okay, well look that. He wrote a memo to his staff. They're not allowed to look at him in the eye. They're not allowed to make conversations with him. They're not allowed to knock on his door. If they do, they will be removed. This is his staff. So nice guy.
Steve Harvey. Good guy. Don't look at me.
You're a much better game show host than Steve Harvey.
All right,
hopefully
Rico,
you're the next host of Family Feud. Okay.
First case here is out of Texas. A Texas man was charged after firing indiscriminately at 2 men who were attacking his fiancée. We did talk about this in the Lions of Liberty forum, which you can join by going to Facebook, typing Lions of Liberty forum, in the search bar at the top, and we'll get you approved to join, and you can talk about stories like this all the time and weigh in on them. So in this case, just to give a brief overview, this guy noticed that his wife was being attacked in front of their house, his fiance. They were trying to, I guess, kidnap his fiance and her child, attacking them. 2 men in ski masks came up to her, and this guy went into his house, grabbed a gun, and I guess started firing. Probably fired a warning shot to get them to start to run. As they started to leave, as they started to flee the scene, he fired at them as they were going down the street. Nobody was hit, but this guy has been charged with the guy firing the gun. I don't think they ever apprehended the two people attempted the kidnapping. The guy with the gun was charged with a 3rd-degree felony. So, Rico, is this a crime? And should this guy do time for firing at attackers who were trying to kidnap his wife and daughter?
Okay, I'm going to separate this into two kind of time periods. One, just reading the story. Okay, so he's seeing attackers. They're wearing masks, and they're attacking his wife. I'm not going to blame or say that's a crime in any sort of way for firing at them. He's trying to protect his wife, and God knows what, any attacker wearing a mask, attacking someone's wife loses the benefit of the doubt in that situation, in my mind. Where I think it becomes a crime and where they charge him is, okay, the attackers are fleeing, and per the article, if this is true, they're running down a crowded street. So you cannot do that. The threat to his wife is over, and they're running, and you are now endangering other people if you're firing a gun indiscriminately down a crowded street. So I would say, yeah, that's a crime because you're putting other people, innocent people, in danger there. And as far as doing time, I would, not knowing anything about this guy, I would say no, because one, no one thankfully got hurt. No innocent bystander got hurt. But if this guy, and I'm giving him the benefit that he was acting under kind of clouded judgment after seeing his wife get attacked, where I would change and say maybe he should do a little bit of time is if he has some kind of record of this sort of behavior. They said the attack might have been gang related. So perhaps this guy has some kind of, not that being in a gang makes you guilty of anything, but if he has past behavior or reckless or dangerous behavior like this, then I'm not going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But as I know now, the facts that I know now, I'll say it is a crime. Give him probation or something.
Yeah, I gotta say I agree with you, and I've actually seen this exact scenario debated in libertarian forums, but I've seen the scenario debated: is it a crime to fire into a crowd if you don't hit anybody? And I would agree with you that yes, it is. That's, at the very least, that's assault. That's a threat against all those people. So I don't understand the argument, because there are people who argue the other side of that and say it's not a crime, nobody's getting hit. So if you're on that side of the argument, please come into the Lions of Liberty forum and tell me what your argument is, because I don't understand how anybody could be in favor of living in a society where people are allowed to just fire into crowds or on busy streets, and it's okay as long as they don't hit anybody. That seems insane to me.
I'm with you there. I don't see the argument.
Okay, next
I don't want to live it.
It's a little bit lighthearted one here to break up the sort of the depressing topics we've talked about today. I forget where this took place. It might have been in the Ukraine, but there's a video of a woman twerking, doing some hardcore twerking as cars are driving by. And she actually, when you're watching the video, she actually really tries to distract this one driver and turns around. I think makes eye contact with the driver and is twerking. And there's a car and a motorcycle coming together, and they're both staring at this woman twerking, and they hit each other, and the guy in the motorcycle goes flying in the air. And I'm pretty sure he lived. I'm pretty sure I read that.
Yeah.
He did live. So you can watch the video.
Broke his pelvis.
Yeah, he broke his pelvis, knowing that he did survive. But the question here is it a crime for a woman to twerk on the side of the road and distract people driving cars, driving deadly weapons? Is that a crime to distract people operating these deadly weapons?
For what I would say no. If she's on the sidewalk, and she's not literally in the street making them look or making them avoid her, it's unfortunate what happened. But the ultimate responsibility is on the drivers. They got to, if they can't maintain their focus on the road, they need to pull over and stop. And, she was definitely messing with them, but I can't see that it's an expression. It's a form of expression, good or bad, and she's doing it. And as far as I know, she's not on the actual road, so I guess I give her a pass. It's probably not the best judgment, but I wouldn't say it's a crime.
Yeah, there were. I didn't see any no twerking signs, so no crime here. But this did remind me. I think it was Seinfeld, an old episode of Seinfeld.
Oh yeah,
where I forget how it happens, but some
Sue
lady
Ellen
that
Mishke.
Jerry's dating is just walking down the street in a bra, right?
Yep.
And I think it was Kramer that got in an accident. But it reminded me of that. Maybe that's where she got the idea from. Over in the Ukraine, they're still watching early 90s sitcoms for entertainment.
I still watch early 90s Seinfeld too, so
I do too.
nothing wrong with that.
That's classic. You can't beat it. Okay, last one for the day. This one is a YouTube prankster. He videotaped himself, or somebody videotaped him, stealing stop signs from an intersection. He took a couple of stop signs. The guy's name, he goes by the name Ross Creations. That's his YouTube. That's a YouTube handle. His name is Charles Ross, and he was arrested and charged with a third-degree felony for grand theft and spent 2 days in jail before he was bailed out. And he faces a maximum of 5 years in prison. So, is this a crime to steal stop signs from these state-controlled roads?
Wait, I didn't get to this point. He was charged with grand theft. That's what he was charged with for stealing a stop sign.
Yeah.
I thought. I guess I didn't read this article very. I thought the point was he was putting people in danger. Not that some stop sign was so valuable that he needed to be charged with grand theft.
Well, I guess that's all they could get on him. Like, what else would they charge him with? For, I guess, reckless endangerment or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, but his point was that I think he wanted to remove the stop signs because they were pointless stop signs. The intersection didn't require them. I would love to see this intersection because I have railed against unnecessary traffic enforcement in the past. So I would love to see it. Was this a busy intersection? There probably should be, when you get to an intersection, there should be some kind of indication whether you need to stop or not.
It's hard to tell from the video. I don't think it was particularly busy intersection, but
I would say give them some kind of, maybe vandalism charge or something for this. Unless he was legitimately putting people in danger, if it's some kind of intersection where it's two 35, 45 mile an hour streets coming together and you got the chance of people running into each other, maybe that's a little dangerous, but stealing a stop sign, I've done that. Come on.
If you want to admit to that on the air. Well, no one knows who you are, so you can
come get me, Johnny Popo.
But yeah, I agree with you. Even if the stop sign really isn't necessary or needed, if you do just remove it and people are used to it and it does cause an accident and someone dies or gets hurt or injured or whatever, at the end of the day, that's really your fault because you have altered the standard or typical traffic flow. So I do agree that 5 years, if he were to get convicted and get the full maximum sentence, that's pretty excessive. I don't think he needs that. So I would say
luckily this isn't a federal crime from what I know of. So Jeff Sessions does not have. He's not in the ear of the prosecutor telling him to pursue the maximum possible fine or penalty. Thankfully,
thanks for tying it back to Jeff Sessions and depressing me.
What I do. That's what I do.
Yep. All right, Rico. Any final thoughts before we sign off here?
But the only thing I could say to possibly ease the worries of people worried about Jeff Sessions is Trump's been known to fire a person or two. You got Comey gone. There's been reports that he's looking at firing Reince Priebus, Sean Spicer this week. So I don't know. Maybe you can fire Jeff Sessions if he doesn't like what he's saying, and we'll get someone better in there. So keep our fingers crossed.
Maybe we need to start a petition. If there isn't one already, it's kind of surprising that there's not.
There's got to be
for Trump to fire Jeff Sessions. So I'll take a
go
look
to-
for that. If there is one,
Yeah.
I will put it in the show notes. If there's not, maybe I'll start one. But
I like it.
That's all we got for today. It's been a fun time with talking with Rico on the show. Thanks for coming on again, Rico.
Yeah, good times, buddy.
And just a couple of notes. If you guys like this show, if you want to hear more of them, the best way to do that is to subscribe on iTunes, where you'll get access to all 3 of our weekly podcasts every Monday. We have Mark Claire every Wednesday, Brian McWilliams with Electric Liberty Land, and every Friday, of course, is this show, Felony Friday. I mentioned the Lions of Liberty Forum before. It's a great way to interact with us, interact with other liberty lovers. You can find that on Facebook. Just type Lions of Liberty Forum in the search bar at the top, and we will get you in. That's really all I have for today. Oh, one last note, Lions of Liberty Pride. If you want to hear more of our content, we have done some exclusive episodes, and Rico was actually on the latest episode of Conspiracy Corner, and that's what we talked about earlier with Louis Free. That was a Louis Free special. So if you want to hear that, you can find that at lionsofliberty.com/support. The lowest level is $5 to join. You get access to all of that content. You can pay more to get more perks, $10, $25 per month. You'll get some discounts and other freebies, free t-shirts, koozies, things like that. So definitely check that out, lionsofliberty.com/support. That's all I got for today. Thank you for listening. This is John Odermatt signing off. Always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning. Woo!
All right. Good show, buddy.